Mike, how you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you, Ryan.
So I'm pumped to have you on the show. You and I met almost close to a year ago, and I heard your story, and we were just chatting right before we got on the show about how you were not as stupid as I was to start a business because you got into it in a crazy different way. And I'm excited to have you on the show to tell this story because went from corporate America to small business owner and then out of it again. But for the listeners who have not heard your story, let's start back, Mike. Where'd you start your career, and then how'd you end up in corporate America?
Well, it wasn't really by choice. It was kind of expected of me. I was a first generation college graduate. No branch on my family tree had ever gone to college, and that was just kind of expected of me. And so when I came out of college in the late 80s, early 90s, I really had little direction other than, wow, I have this college degree. What should I do with it? And I'm happy to report it was the love of a good woman that set me on my path to success, which behind every good man is an even greater woman.
I would.
She set me. That's right. That's right. You better, because she's listening.
Yeah, she's listening, right?
I was very fortunate enough to fall into the wireless industry when there was about 5 million cell phones in this country. And my first job out of college just got by chance. They came on campus and interviewed, was in the wireless business, and it was for customer service. An excellent place to cut your teeth on business in America. And, my whole career has been a series of launching points that really started in the wireless business. That was a business, if anybody remembers, that was really the wild, wild west. We came into work every Monday and basically reinvented our business every Monday.
I can only imagine.
Exactly. What worked last week? Okay, let's keep that. What were the 10 things that really did not work? Okay, we're not going to do those anymore. Let's try this. And it really conditioned me to the environment of hyper change.
So I was just going to say, what would that be like, Mike? I mean, I couldn't imagine doing customer service for a new, I couldn't, what wireless was like back then and trying to make sure that people were happy and now relying on this kind of technology that alone, not only hyper growth, but hyper customer service.
Oh, it was amazing. We were down in Bloomington and there were 5 of us. I only did this job for 8 months, but there were 5 of us and we handled every wireless customer in 5 states. And you just didn't go to the store and get educated or know what's going on. Hey, my kid bought me this $5,000 cell phone. How do I use it?
Is that the car ones that were
yeah, there's no dial tone. What do I do? I don't know what to do. And if you wanted to get a hold of somebody who was traveling, you couldn't just dial their number. It only searched for them where their number was based. So if they were driving from here to Madison, you had to know which towers they were probably at, and you had to dial a special number to get into, the Chippewa Falls towers, and hopefully they were there. So it was, it was interesting. I was on the team that launched voicemail for the first time during that position, which was interesting in and of itself. So it really prepared me for hyper change because I quickly moved into sales, moved down to Orlando with my wife, had a job down there, and moved into sales, and very quickly realized that as a hyper competitive person, I played 4 sports in high school and 2 in college, that sales was both the best thing that ever happened to me and the worst thing that ever happened to me. Because if I was number 3 on the team, I would work as long and hard as I could to be number 1. And then I had to be number 1 in the region and then in the country. And by the age of 24, I had an ulcer.
No kidding.
That was not fun.
Was that just from pure stress, or what was it?
It was from 16-hour days, 7 days a week for the first 2 years I was out of college, 3 years out of college. So again, it was the best and the worst of it, and found my calling in working for a company that wanted to develop a wireless business. They were a car dealership. They wanted to sell cell phones along with their cars. It was a novel concept and took off and all over the country. You buy a car, you get a cell phone. So I built the sales force that did that and found my calling in developing people and teams. It was the first time that I'd ever built anything in business. I was 24 years old. I had no idea what I was doing other than I'm a good salesperson, so let's make these people good salespeople. And then I started seeing the lights go on in people and the changes in their life that it can make when they are successful in something. When they actually take that turn and, oh my gosh, I'm excited about what I do and I see a future in it. And that whole time period in my 20s, as I worked my way up through GTE, which was the phone company predecessor to Verizon. That's one of the companies that made up Verizon ultimately in 2000, I believe, is when the transition happened.
You got to tell your story about Verizon, where you were when, because weren't you part of the whole naming thing?
Yes, I only have two claims to fame. Number one, that I met the guy that invented the @ symbol in email.
No shit.
He was at a conference. He was long retired. He had worked for GTE Labs, I believe, back in the '60s, and he told us, and he told the story of how they came up with the @ symbol. It was really amazing.
What did he get hit? Was he drawing an A and got bumped from behind or something?
Yeah. They were kicking around different ways to do it, and they were going to spell out @ with parentheses around it. But he was a really neat guy. But my second one was that I was on the company-wide conference call with all the directors and VPs when they announced what the new name of the company would be. And it was built up for days. We're going to find out. They just spent, X million dollars. This is the new company, and it's going to be the premier wireless company. And they said the word Verizon, and the laughter in our conference room overwhelmed the room.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
Could not believe. I mean, the jokes were flying left and right within minutes. Vermin, Horizon, there's a rat in your future, all types of just funny things. And, now it's a top 10 brand in the world.
Right. Crazy.
So it was really, really interesting. GTE was a fabulous company, and Verizon still is, I believe. Still have many people that work there. I started building a market for them in Northern Illinois. I was the youngest general manager in the company at the time. 26. They somehow handed a $25 million business to me. I still don't understand why, but that was a good build, and it was more of a build than a turnaround. But I got some really good press from within the company from the results that we did in those markets. It was a 7-county market. I spent most of my time in the car visiting retail stores and outside sales teams and indirect distribution agents. And it came the time that they came to me and said, we have 2 places we'd like you to go and work your magic and turn these 2 places around, and you have your choice. I said, oh, wow, great. Well, we didn't really like living in where we were living at the time. So we said, hey, let's go. Cleveland or San Diego?
Yeah,
it was a really, really hard choice. But, after about 3 seconds, my wife said, and you didn't tell him Cleveland, right? No.
Drew Carey right now.
Yeah, exactly. So the government major accounts group out of San Diego, it's one of the biggest government areas in the country, along with Virginia and DC and the big Air Force Navy bases, was I believe it was number 9 out of 9 different markets, and it should have been number 1. The interesting part of that particular one, number 1, all of my direct reports were 15 to 25 years older than I was, so I had that going for me. And second of all, we had just acquired that market from an old Bell legacy market, Pacific Bell. So not only was the new leader coming in to straighten things up and get it moving in the right direction, he's also the guy from the new parent company. And I had this one guy that he'd been in wireless literally since 82, when there were like 10 cell phones. He was one of the originals, and everybody said, watch out. Oh, you're going to have to meet this guy. Oh no, he's one of your, managers, and he's going to work for you. And it was one of the first times I really had to say, this is a person I need on my side. How do I get him there? Because he was the opinion leader of the group. That was, they came to him. And this guy, I was 28 or 9. This guy was 59. So he'd literally been in some kind of telecom since I was born. And we ended up developing a great relationship. I said, you're my guy. Can you help me? Can you help me bring this team around? Because we're going to have to make some changes. We're going to have to grow. It's going to be painful. And boy, he just kind of melted, over a couple of weeks, and said, hey, I'm going to help you, and we're going to build this together. And we ended up going from number 9 to number 1 in about a year and a half.
When
And
you're building these teams, Mike, because I know that's part of what you had done when you bought your company too, which we'll get into. I'm just curious, like, what are you doing with these people that are like, how do you find that twinkle? Because I know a lot of owners that I work with or people that have been on the show. I mean, it's like, people that's how everything's done. I mean, business is business, but then it's all about people. Like, what are you doing to get to them, to get them excited, to actually get them rowing in the right direction? And then how do you prune the people that aren't actually on the team?
Well, I think first, since I've come into a dozen brand new situations where all eyes are upon you, right? Oh, you're the new guy. You're the new person. You're going to rescue us. You're going to save us. We just laid off half the company and now you're the leader. What's up with you? No matter what, people have a very, very refined bullshit meter. I think, seriously, I think 90% of the people can spend 10 minutes with you and see if you are genuinely interested in what they feel. So I think it all starts with internally that that I know I'm responsible for, let's say, these 50 people in this company or this division, but that I truly think about not just them, but between those 50 employees, they might have another 100 and, another 75 spouses, significant others, children, that my purpose when I walk in that door is to help them succeed to their next level, the next rung, the next position. And that's the core of I think great leadership, is that you are truly and 100% there as a servant to lend your skills and talents to that. Once a team sees that, they will attain the absolute top rung of teamwork. And the most successful teams that I was a part of and led, was that when you sit around a table with your top 10 leaders, where everybody says individually, I have these skills, I have these passions, I'm good at this, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to lay it right in the middle of the table. And all those people lay their talents in the middle of the people, in the middle of the table, and it's for everybody's use. We're going to drop pretenses, we're going to drop titles, we're going to drop egos, and we're all going to work together on this. And this is what I bring.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really what starts great teams and is the foundation of turnarounds.
Yep. No, I've been part of it, and it's it's fun, and that's what I think a lot of that kind of experience too. And I'm curious is like how you took that outside of corporate America, but like because I think a lot of owners that end up exiting, they miss that like group magic. You know what I mean? Because it's hard to recreate that kind of stuff once you have a team like that. It's very difficult to sever those bonds, and it's tough when you end up moving on.
And there's varying degrees of it. I can't say that happened every place I was, or any team that I was part of. But when it happens, it's a stupid word, but it's magical.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
I mean, I literally remember waking up on a Sunday, thinking it was Monday for about 5 seconds and getting up to go to work, and then being bummed out because it wasn't. I never forgot that. I'm like, okay, I'm at a career best here. Mm-hmm. This is what I want to create. And, whether I have it or not, whether I have it, it's, do the people have it?
So how did you go, Mike, from like, wanting to work on Sundays, from that to deciding that like you'd had enough of the corporate world?
Sure. Well, I did 3 more turnarounds in corporate after, government and major accounts in San Diego. After that, they gave me all of Southern California, for all business, small business, medium, large accounts. I ran that. And then the Verizon merger happened. AT&T bought the market, and they had a different structure, so they paid all the VPs off and got a nice chunk of change. Did a startup immediately after that, at the very tail end of the .com boom, which is, probably 4 podcasts with all the stories of catered lunches, ping pong tournaments. I think our greatest accomplishment was that we were one of the first companies to have Wi-Fi in our building.
Good use of money, right? I just like, let's spend it all.
Exactly.
Beanbags, Wi-Fi. Let's get like mainframe.
Exactly. 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 So I had about a 5-year middle there. I did a turnaround for a cable company, Southern California. And in between, after I left Verizon, and when we moved back to Minnesota, it was back into Verizon, but in their marketing and advertising division. And I ran the upper Midwest for Verizon Information Services, which, hold on to your hats, sold Yellow Pages.
I love it.
Right? It was right coming out of the heyday of the Yellow Pages as the prime advertising source for all small businesses, which it was, and moving into the digital sphere. So it was the first pay-per-click models. It was the first banner ads. It was the first directory service as the internet took off. A lot of fun. And it was a turnaround as well. It was a huge division. You'd never think a metro area of Minneapolis, St. Paul would have 40 salespeople selling Yellow Pages, but we did.
Well, I believe it.
And they were very successful. So back with Verizon for about 3 years, it started becoming a little more commoditized. It changed into a very, very big company feel, which almost all of the places I'd been in my career were big companies, but there were a lot of local control. The local GM, the local VP had P&L responsibility, which in now 15, 20 years later is unheard of.
Right.
Nobody has P&L responsibility at those levels. So much more commoditized, and it just run its course. And I just decided I didn't want to work for anybody ever again.
Where were you? What happened? And back, like, I don't know if you ever read the book E-Myth. They call it the entrepreneurial seizure.
Yep, it was the entrepreneurial seizure. That's exactly right.
Where were you?
Exactly right. Well, I started getting cynical, and that's your first clue. It's how I pick out employees that have just run their course. They get cynical. They get cynical about everything about their job, and they just start complaining, whether to the boss or to everybody or whatever. It's cynicism. And I got really cynical. And I got so cynical, I sat down Monday morning one time and I said, I'm going to do a time study of my job as, senior director over this, these 5 states. How much time do I actually get to do my job, which is to grow the business and keep employees and customers happy? And it was under 30%. The rest was conference calls and, reports.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm like, this sucks. I'm done. So I decided to go out on my own. I started my own consulting company, and I wanted to do for small and medium-sized businesses what I had been doing my career for large businesses. And with my experience and contacts, it took off relatively easy, relatively quickly. I had great work, and I really focused on direct sales, which is a big problem in small companies, medium-sized companies. They've got salespeople. They've evolved into needing to create demand, but there was no infrastructure in place in a small company where the owner or president may be functionally literate in the industry, say website design, but they've never managed salespeople. So we started out managing salespeople for small companies and developed the system that we could do that very effectively over the phone, which means instead of managing 8 salespeople, which normally a sales manager could do in person, we can manage 25. And I hired a couple contractors, 3 actually we ended up with, that would run these programs with companies, and we did well, and it was nice. Because when I came into it, I said, I'm going to do my own thing, and my kids are either going to starve or we're going to make it. So my kids never got that skinny. There were some lean months starting off, but it was, I sold my 66 Mustang to finance part of the startup. So I wasn't too happy about that, but at the end I bought a 67. So
I got
1 year back
into it, right?
Got back into it. It pulled me back in.
What was it, because I know we'll be getting to some of the juicy part of the story here in a sec. I'm curious, as you were doing all these turnarounds and stuff like that, Mike, and building these teams, I mean, when you're doing your consulting, did you miss having the team and the infrastructure to be able to make big moves like you used to?
I missed having, a $20 billion company behind me, right?
Yeah,
You make a mistake. It's like, hey, you're going to miss your budget by $70,000. Oh, okay. Is that bad? Just don't do it again. Not now. I didn't have a
nice,
lot
your
of overhead.
Mustang.
I did exactly. Yeah, I could just sell my Mustang. The biggest thing I missed was every time I worked out of my house. We all worked at our house. I'd go up to the coffee machine and there'd be nobody there to talk to. I totally missed the social aspect of being around people, and my own team. I could influence. I could influence my consultants and my clients, obviously, but there's a different relationship there. Which really, when my consulting company pivoted, was when I really started somehow to get introduced to these companies that were almost dead. And I'm in the sales business, so let's boost sales. But they had all these other issues that I dealt with before, and it really morphed into I need to talk to all the bankers. I need to talk to to the business brokers. I need to talk to the CPAs because these are where these companies come from, and I want to help them. Let's do a turnaround with a whole small company or portion of it. I got brought in as a kind of a rent a CEO mentor for some younger owners brought in by their boards to help them become a leader, help them to develop the processes needed to do it. But about a year and a half in, I had a client that was a plumbing company. Now I knew a little bit about plumbing. All my jobs in high school and college were in the trades and framing and concrete, and electrical and plumbing. And so I knew a little bit about their business, and they really didn't have the stomach for what I told them they needed to do to turn this company around. It was a 10-year-old company, had really good customers, but it was being mismanaged. They were still using Yellow Pages as their only advertising source. And in the end, they didn't. They said, "Well, can you help somebody? Can you find somebody to buy it?" I said, "Well, I'll do you one better than that. I like this business. I'll buy it. We'll buy it. We'll turn it around. We'll do what we need to with it." So then I went home and said, "Honey, we're going to buy a plumbing company." And
like,
waited
hey,
for the
Mike, the sink's already dripping in our house. How are you going to fix other people's stuff?
Dude, you wear a suit and tie every day. You're going to own a plumbing company. Are you stinking nuts? So don't worry, honey. I'm not touching the stock portfolio. I'm not borrowing against the house. I'm going to use my part of my 401k, and this will be it's really cheap. I got it, at a very, very good price, obviously, and we're going to turn it around. There's going to be ups and downs, but I've done this before, and I think we'll do well.
So, Mike,
so that's how I got into plumbing.
Well, so that's how I got into plumbing. So from wireless to plumbing, did you fully embrace the plumber's crack? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious, Mike. So if you for the audience, because you and I were chatting before we got on the show about acquisition entrepreneurship and buying instead of building, and I think you took an interesting approach here, especially with your gravitation towards more distressed companies, which typically don't get sold. You can find them all over the business brokerage websites, and there's usually just tons and tons of problems with them, or people are burnt out. And so you got a unique experience being able to just, you had some exposure to it. So maybe kind of walk us through your thought process of okay, what did you understand about what was appealing to you about the business for you to want to do this? And then how did you value it if it was distressed? And then kind of maybe explain how you used your 401k to actually purchase it.
Sure. There were really three things that I was enamored with this business. First of all, it had good bones. And when I say the company had good bones, it had, one or two of the three legs of the stool. They had a great customer base that I knew could be that I knew could be marketed to. They weren't being marketed to. So that was really the crux of it.
How many
it had great customers.
They have. I mean,
they probably had 15,000 past customers in the database, and a really good database. It was a franchise, so there were some good systems behind it. But in terms of, coming from a corporate background, having a well versed business skill set, looking at all the other parts of the business, The two things that attracted me to it, number one was that it was all residential, and they got paid the first day, the day you do the job. So I had no AR, right? I had a backstop for, I had a cash reserve that, emergencies, growth that I could draw on. I didn't want to, but that was very appealing to me. No AR. The second thing was in a lot of service industries and plumbing especially, all the labor is variable, which means I don't have other than my overhead in, dispatch and billing and, accounting, all my cost of goods sold is completely variable. So if we didn't sell anything, I didn't pay anybody. That was very appealing to me.
Is it almost kind of like the trucking industry where you've got 1099 people are kind of their own little mini, is it all just mini entrepreneurs that you just deployed once you got the job?
Some service companies do run it that way. Garage doors is big like that. Electrical in some places, plumbing in some places, but in the plumbing world, they're usually the good companies. And this ended up to be one of the larger plumbing companies in the metro. They're actual employees, but they're on commission. They're actually classified by as a commissioned outside salesperson.
No, I did not know that. Huh.
Yep. So that also brings up the other one, which is there's no overtime. You might be charging your customer overtime, for a night. So we never did, but most of the companies do. So you're getting a higher ticket amount, and the technician is making a percentage of that. So they do make a little bit more, but it's all relative. It's all the same percentage. So your wage percentage of revenue stays identical every month.
Interesting.
So those were the very big things that drew me to it. In terms of financing, I was very much a neophyte in that way. I had the franchise that I was going through said SBA loans the only way to go. They're the only one that's going to spread goodwill out over 10 years. They don't have very many covenants at all. Go do an SBA loan. Okay, I'll go do that. I had I put a large sum down, which they were very happy with. I probably could have got a regular bank loan for the amount that I put down, and so it was a great way to originally buy the company. The fees were outrageous
for the SBAs, yeah.
I mean, unbelievably outrageous. Had no idea that they were until we got all done and I started investigating. But the biggest hurdle and thing that I wish I would have known was the amount of collateral that you have to put up for an SBA loan. It was so unbelievably prohibitive. I think I was over collateralized by a factor of at least 2 on the loan. I mean, they had me put my stock portfolio up there, which my wife was not happy about. They had me put my house, which was paid for, up as collateral on the loan.
It's a joke.
And she was definitely not happy with that. But
we technically said, honey, we have everything, but it's not ours.
Exactly. It could be somebody else's. And I made a commitment to her right there. I said, if everything goes as planned, a year, 2 years, we'll be able to go over to conventional, we'll pay it off, and we'll get all of our personal assets off of the collateral sheet, which actually we did in a year and a half. I was, really bummed that I paid all those fees to the SBA. But I found a good small community banker that wanted to understand my business and me and what we were doing. We went from, under $1 million to almost $2 million in a year and a half in revenue. And the previous owners were not profitable. They were running negative cash flows and negative profit. Barely. They were kind of breaking even. But we were up into the teens very quickly in terms of profit percentage.
So for the listeners, Mike, tell everybody why you collateralized everything, took out a loan for a company that was losing money. So why was it even worth anything, and how
was it valued?
How was it valued?
That was actually a piece that we had agreed on a price. I came to that. It was basically a discounted cash flow model, my discounted cash flow model. And we had agreed on a price. And then we went to the SBA and found out, much to my chagrin, that the SBA will come value your company for you. And by the way, if you want our money, you will sell it to that buyer at that price and nothing more. Mm-hmm. No side deals, no consulting deals, nothing under the table, anything like that. And the SBA came back with a price of almost $100,000 less than I'd already negotiated with the seller.
So how'd you guys fix the discrepancy?
He had to eat it, and he did. So I got it for less money. So they valued it, and then the SBA has their own methods for valuation. It ended up to be an asset sale with a little bit of goodwill at the end for the name and the brand and the customers. So, compared to what I sold it for 5 years later, it was, in the 8 to 10x range. But we got a really good price. I can't.
Well, so I want to dive into what you did to do that and how your exit worked too. But one last thing is, as you were looking at the business, what was the deal with the franchise? Because I interviewed the co-founder, not Zero Res, but the local one here, where he scaled it from 0 to like 18 million. It was a franchise, right? And every franchise got different stipulations as far as like. Because the value of a franchise, they have, it's like, Big Brother looking over you, telling you what you can and can't do. So did you have any, like, what was their view on exits and transitions?
They have, every big franchise group has a whole group that buys and sells their franchises for the franchisees. I checked this particular one out. It's the Dwyer Group out of Waco, Texas. And they own over 20 different brands of all service companies. They were very important. I was told that there are some franchises out there that will, absolutely just steal your business with royalties, excessive oversight. I didn't want either of those, obviously. And as I checked this particular one out, and before I actually went down there and met everybody during the sale process, found that the royalties were very reasonable. Now, obviously, I wouldn't want to pay for the royalties if I didn't have to, but you do.
Right. They're not negotiable.
Some people try to find. No, they're not negotiable. Believe me. The good thing about it is it's a sliding scale. The bigger you are, the less you pay as a percentage.
Got it.
And the systems that a franchise brings to somebody who's even coming from corporate America, or let's say you were they do transitions all the time from private business to franchise. So you own an HVAC company. What you're missing probably is the systems, the good dispatch systems, the good financial packages, the training, the support from a licensed franchise consultant, and they'll move their businesses, all their revenue, all their customers over into this model. It works a lot all the time.
And did they have any stipulations? Because I got a client that's a GM dealer, and GM pretty much has complete authority to say who is the successor. Did they have any issues? Like did you? They have to approve it. Right. So they had to approve me when I bought in. When I sold it, that was a stipulation of the sale in the agreement. It's all depending on whether you will qualify. And the Dwyer Group is one of the higher end franchise groups out there. I highly recommend them. So Mike,
they take that very seriously.
So yeah, sorry. So what was the first day? So everything closes, and then you and I had talked. So you had actually had a plan, like, because you were an acquirer and you had collateralized everything. You had to have a plan. So what did your plan look like? What were your goals? Timing? And what was the first thing you did? So how did you map it all out? And what was the main target?
Sure. First 9 months was true survival. For the first 30 days, I went home after a very long day and asked my wife, why the hell did I do this? Because the old owners, God bless them, left me with a big pile of crap.
A bunch of skeletons.
Just a big pile of crap. Seriously, after a week, I only had 5 employees.
How many did you start with?
I think I inherited maybe 11, and we were quickly very, very much down to 5. We ended 5 years later at 26. But so survival mode for 9 months, which is how do I just get the phone to ring? Which background in digital marketing, we went real heavy into that to get the phone ringing. And then as the years went through, we refined that and tested and ended up doing a really good job in terms of ROI lead per customer and those kind of things. But my first objective was to get financially sound enough, show some growth over 3 or 4 quarters, so that I could get out of the collateral and get the attention of some local business banks. And right around that time, it actually ramped up so quickly. I was amazed. It ramped those bones there. Once we started talking to customers and saying, "Hey, come back, give us a try. Give us a try. Here's some specials." It really took off. We took advantage of 2 things in the market, which for service companies, I don't see a lot of people doing this out here. We saw an opportunity in nights and weekends. Now, if you're a tradesperson or you're a service person, you're a dispatcher, a call center worker, that's not the time. You don't want to work second shift or third shift or weekend shift. But we came up with that basic idea for this particular market. Nobody's serving this. And then we came up with, we're not going to charge you any differently on Saturday night at 11 p.m. than I do on Wednesday at 2 p.m. So same price, nights and weekends, anytime, same price, just call us. And it started working. And we went from one on-call person during the weeknights to a full staff of people whose regular schedules were 2 to 10, Wednesday through Sunday, for example. So we started covering that, and near the end, before we sold, revenues in those time frames were almost 40% of our whole revenues.
Wow.
Very
it's
big.
like, duh. And I love it when I hear stories like that, and you're just like, duh. Because like I had this other guy on my podcast that went into the dentistry, and he's like, yeah, like we did nights and on call. And I'm like, well, yeah, because everybody's working. So like who has time to like meet their plumber from 10 to 6 at their house?
Exactly. So that those 2 bits, what I really wanted to do though, was to get big enough to where I could afford a general manager. I wanted to hire somebody to come in here and at least for 6-8 months run the business next to me, find somebody I could trust to actually run it. Because I still had my consulting company. I still had my clients. I was still trying to service them. At different points, I would basically throw all my clients over to my other employees and contractors to service. And sometimes I had to step completely out of it. But I got to that point. It hurt a little bit. I had to pay myself a little bit less for a couple months. But I got somebody to run that and take over at about the 1.5 year mark. That was also the time when I got all my personal collateral off of the company, and it started organically producing enough cash to do the things we wanted to do. We bought 3 of our neighbors, some very small transactions, neighbor franchisees. We did that all organically. We did, I think, 1 seller loan for 1 territory, 1 business. But the rest of them, we just cash flowed. We just stroked a check, saved up, and did it.
Just a clarifying question, Mike. So was a general manager for your consulting company or for the plumbing company?
For the plumbing company.
Okay.
For the plumbing company.
And so you hired that person around 1.5 years in?
About 1.5 years in. I transitioned him out of, we had opened a commercial sales division doing plumbing and drain work for restaurants and commercial buildings. And he was the salesperson for that, and he was a good guy. So I slowly moved him into that role and managing all the department managers now. And I stepped back a little bit. And for about 2 years, I stepped back to maybe 1.5 days, 2 days, 3 days a week, depending on the week.
So
I would just,
when you were doing this, Mike, because I think one of the problems that a lot of entrepreneurs have is that when you're doing stuff like what you just described, I don't know what his price ticket was for his salary, but I mean, at the revenues and stuff that you're at, it's directly out of the entrepreneur's pocket. So then they end up getting like totally like stonewalled at like the $2 million mark, because it's like, do I sacrifice, personal expenses or pay for that person? So,
yep.
How did you, I think, because you had an ultimate target, I'm curious, as you kind of reiterate, like what were you driving for from a timeline? Maybe there wasn't a timeline, but how did that help you make these kind of decisions? Because I think that's a big dynamic, that people are so focused on cash flow and making the money each
Yep.
year that they don't think that this is going to essentially like eliminate the constraints to growth and to a higher valuation. I mean, how did you reconcile those kind of things according to your plan?
Well, I knew 3 million, about 3 million was about as high as I wanted to go or could go, mainly because you're adding an entirely another layer of oversight and management at that, and you're into another 3-year growth cycle. And I had set 5 years. Really, I have no idea where I come up with 5 years, but I said, we're going to do this for 5 years. We're going to get a much higher valuation if it's the absentee owner. I've got a good GM running the business, and it's going to be expensive. Now, luckily, that fit into my strategy that I caught on to very early on, and it all has to do with Uncle Sam. I would rather drive a really nice work truck on the company's balance sheet than give that money to the government. Mm-hmm. So we're all into optimizing our tax bill. But my theory, and I think it worked in practice, and it definitely did with the GM. I would rather have an easier life as an owner and pour that money into our employees and development, pay top wages so that we don't have turnover, have a GM so that I'm not, working 7 days a week or even 5 days a week, and show less to the bottom line, over and above the fact that will produce a more profitable company. And it did. In years 4 and 5, we really took off under that model. We were able to grow and add a nights and weekends manager, an office manager. I was able to take a bigger stake with a CPA that could do more of the finance work that I was doing, and it worked out really well. Above all, in year 2, I came up with a document. It was my just in case document, and it was basically the brochure on buying my company. Now, I don't think I would have got much more than I paid for it in year 1, but when I finally saw, hey, if somebody came to me with this number, how would I justify it? Or if they said, hey, I want to buy your business, what would it be? How would I justify that? So I created a sale document in year 2, and every year in year 3, I would update it with the last year's financials, performance, acquisitions, all those things. In year 3, I started doing it twice a year, and in year 4, I did it every quarter. Now, it also had some other benefits. My banks loved me. They said, we don't have any customers doing quarterly, complete operational overview, financial overview. Mm-hmm. Can we give you some money? That was basically what it came down to.
And by the way, we're not going to take your stock portfolio or your house.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I got a big customer. I'm going to need, a couple $100,000 on my credit line to hold this big customer I'm going to get for 3 months. Oh, can we give you 400? Well, no, I just need 2, and I don't think I'll use it, but I just want to have it there. Okay, that'll be good. So the banks loved it, and ultimately, when we hit 5 years and decided I think we're at the top. It's worth the most it's going to be in the next, right now, unless we take the next step, and then we're into 3 years from now. And so that was a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, and we started to look for buyers. I was going
to say, before we go down that journey, Mike, I got a couple other questions on it. So, because you and I both know, as we've been talking over the last year, like, and that this is what I preach, and this is what I do for our clients, and the whole point of the podcast. Like, where did you get the insight to have the 5 years, the 5-year plan, and then how was it the experience that you had from buying it, where you were like tracking the valuation, and how were you so as you're looking at their financials and updating them like semi-annual, then quarterly, like what were you doing to say, okay, like here's the valuation that I'm looking at, here's kind of like the deal structure? I mean, were you looking at net proceeds and where did you gather that information? Because when you were doing that, there wasn't a whole lot of help to do that, so you actually gathered that by yourself through other things. But and what were the KPIs you're constantly looking at?
Definitely net income, EBITDA, and everything above. Margins in that particular business were relatively stable. I didn't really improve margins very much. I really increased revenue, and I really cut on expenses, mainly from turnover. We one of the lowest turnovers in our whole franchise group out of 350 franchisees. And it was because we put the money into the people and didn't really try to shortchange people. But I think the structure of the planning element really came out of my years in corporate America. I mean, you don't go to the bathroom without a plan, right? 75-page document on what the hell you're going to do next year. And then you go sit in a room with, 6 people that are above you, and they pick it apart piece by piece by piece by piece. So that attention to planning was really ingrained in me from all my years in corporate. But the metrics that I wish I had a great story and insight and aha moment that it was. But in the franchise world, they know what the franchise knows what their franchisees are worth. They sell 20 or 30 of them every year.
That's helpful. Yeah.
If you get to this point, you're a 5 multiple. If you got a GM, you're a 5.5. If you have none of that, it's an asset sale. If you're under $1 million, it's X, Y. It's almost a rote.
Isn't that awesome though? Like, I mean, that's that's what we're trying to create, right? I mean, that's like what we want it's an actual game plan versus just, sitting on the hamster wheel, just going like crazy. I mean, so would they publish this stuff, or did you just chat with the people, or?
Oh, no. And I did seminars at quarterly and annual meetings on business plans, on having this kind of document. But the process for preparing franchisees inside any franchise system is a pretty well-defined process. They know who should exit. They encourage certain people to exit, and they help them with that.
Were they encouraging you to exit? They couldn't have, because you were like a poster child.
No, they liked that I was, producing 3% times the revenue the previous guy was, which is 3.7, times their royalties. But they knew that, there are more and more people like me getting into franchising and these businesses. People coming out of that 20-year stint with, big fat 401ks they're not doing anything with and won't do anything with for, 15 years. So
corporate refugees, man.
You bet. So,
Mike, what was what was the triggering event that you said, okay, I've got this doc, now's the time? Like what led you to that?
I hit the 5-year mark, and I said, I really think this is worth the most it's going to be worth for the next 3 years. And I don't want to do another 3 years. I want to go do something else. I want to retire. I actually did. We closed. I had a nice barrel of money in my pocket. I sold all my consulting clients to my employees. I closed down that, and I remodeled bathrooms in my house for 4 months.
So I want to circle back to that, because I know you got some funny anecdotes on that. But before, what was just quickly, what was the process to selling? I mean, then did you how did you vet out the buyers? Was there a broker involved? Like, how did you figure out how much money you were going to make? I mean, what was the team? Just kind of shed some color on that whole process.
Sure. In the franchising world, like I said, they have a process for that. They kind of have a small, medium, and large in most franchising. The small way is we're going to put, the franchise puts out an email and says, hey, these are the ones we have open. They put it on their website. That's basically zero cost, right? And very little results. The large is they'll hook you up with a traditional business broker who will market and sell your business and take 10% at the end. I chose the middle option, which was basically a subscription fee to a group of people whose job it is, whose companies buy and sell franchises. So they already have these relationships with high net worth individuals, people coming out of corporate, family offices that are ready to do that. So instead of 10%, I paid, $15,000 or something upon sale. Once the buyers are vetted then by the franchise, which was really nice. So I didn't have to meet with a bunch of yahoos.
Nice.
I met 4 different people. Did not all the first 3 would need a seller note, and so I was very picky with that. Ended up the person that ultimately bought the business was a lot more self-financed, and a really, really good guy, similar background to mine, coming out of corporate America, and wanted to buy a business that he could, have and run and support his family with, and it worked out very well with that. So on both sides.
Was it an asset or a stock sale?
It was an asset sale.
Did you guys have any choice in that, or was it?
Not really. It really just
because of the size
made itself into it. There's a lot of goodwill in service companies. There's assets, obviously, but
yep. Well, so when you were doing that, I'm just curious as you were going down that process because of how much you planned. I mean, I find it very rare that an owner knows exactly how much they're going to put in the bank. It's kind of like wish and hope and throw the dart and whatever.
If all my money was in macaw and there was no Uncle Sam at the other end going to take a big slice out of it, I knew exactly what I was going to net because I had relatively little debt. Mm-hmm. And I didn't pay much for the company in the first place. Mm-hmm. So really the big conversation was with my CPA, who was an excellent guide. And I said, give me 3 scenarios, right? Because we're still negotiating. Mm-hmm. Asset, stock. Should we close in 17 on December 31st, or should we close on January, which we could negotiate? Tax laws, new president. Trump had just been elected. We had no idea what was going to happen.
Yeah, no idea.
So he gave me these 3 scenarios, and with less down, more down. Mm-hmm. The really only big thing you have at the end of that asset sale, especially in a service company, is the allocation of assets mm-hmm. to the sale. That was a big negotiation, and he gave me some ranges on that. And in the end, what he gave to me is these 3 scenarios. We ended up going with somewhere around the middle scenario. And in the end, that check that I got that day was within $5,000 of his estimate.
That is super cool. That's awesome. You don't hear that too often.
If you don't have knowledgeable advisors for that piece, for all the pieces, you're leaving money on the table.
So when you get this check and the wire happened, like what, go back to your retirement, because you've said it multiple times in meetings I've been with you. Like what was it like? What went through your head, and what was the retirement like?
Yeah. Well, it was really nice seeing. I took a picture of the check. I took a picture of my bank account, and then started paying off the remainder of the business debt and all that stuff you do at closing. But in the end, I kind of knew in the back of my head I wouldn't stay retired because I'm relatively young at 51 to be doing that. I think in the end, I just wanted to say I could retire and know that I could. And it's not life-changing money, but at the same time, I wanted to just clear my head. Got rid of both of my companies. Let's take some time off. Let's do something else, not involving, my brain. So I just remodeled a couple bathrooms in my house, which was a lot of fun, and got really bored. It was kind of like when you're sick or you play hooky in high school. There's nothing to do anything with because everybody else is in school.
That's a great analogy. I remember after we sold, my dad lived on a lake. And he just wanted to he would be like on his pontoon on a Tuesday morning by himself. And he's like, where is everybody? I wanted someone to play with.
Exactly. So as you know, I hooked up with Jason, who was one of my early consulting clients 7-8 years ago at Gratis Capital. And I've found a nice home with them, working on their operating companies and doing what I have done my whole career, which is helping people advance and building systems and processes that end up putting a lot more to the bottom line. And it's been a great ride ever since.
So you've made the comment that, you didn't have a life after plan. I mean, is there anything you would have done differently because you're Mr. Planner? Like what is there anything you would have done differently before selling that would have incorporated a life after business plan?
Well, first of all, I think that unless you're, a traditional retiree at 65 or 67 or 68, where you're just tired and you're ready to not work. As an entrepreneur or somebody who's been, fortunate enough to do that early, we come from planning backgrounds, which means we need to plan that retirement. We need to plan that time as diligently as we planned our next quarterly, operations report. or the next, what have you. And I didn't. I just wanted to be done, and I was done. So that was my first mistake. And next time I do it, I will be doing some planning. So, what planning? Does it just mean the absence of work? And it doesn't for me. A couple of the books I had read around that time after I sold the company was really focused on finding your purpose in retirement. Not a lot of content out there for younger people who don't want to work or not going to work. But next time I retire, I will have that purpose. I've done some teaching in the past at universities, and that might have been something. But you never really quit working. You just quit caring about how much money they're paying you.
Well, and it's funny because I've said it on the show before, where if you can answer two questions, which is, what are the most interesting problems I want to solve, and then who do I want to solve those with? And if you can solve both of those, you kind of got it. You've kind of got it made. If the money thing is not a problem.
Exactly.
And then you wrote a book, though, didn't you? So in there's a book that you wrote. So I don't know if you want to explain to the listeners what that's about, and then what's the best way to get in touch with you.
So you can get a hold of me at, my email address is mike@wickam.com. That's my last name, Wickam. Or you can go on Amazon, search my last name, Wickam, and my book is entitled The Unforced Rhythms of Grace and Gratitude. And it's in the spiritual motivational section. And if you're one of the, you could be the 773rd person to buy my book. So,
hey, I'll tell you what, that's 732 people that have not bought my unwritten book. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to give the credit for it, because I'm in the process and it is not easy. So if there, Mike, if there's one thing that you have for, I think, an owner that's looking at this stuff, one, maybe, we covered a lot of ground. You got a great story that I think a lot of people can relate to in different various fashions, but is there one thing that you want to leave an owner with that is kind of looking up for the first time, going, okay, what should I be doing?
Well, boy, I'd go back to planning. If you do not have a plan, you are certainly going to get there.
Yep, I agree.
Pick a date. I don't care what the date is. If it's 10 years from now, if that transfer of generational wealth or responsibility to your now 10-year-old, put that date on the calendar. Take one step this quarter towards that. And then next quarter, take one more step, and then take one more step, and accelerate it as you get to that point where you want to make that transaction or attempt the transaction.
Well, I think what I love about your story, Mike, is that so many times there's actually a running joke out there that every owner's got a 5-year rolling exit plan, because when they get closer, they just push it back out. But you actually did it. You actually held to it and then pulled the ripcord, man. It's a cool story. It's been a lot of fun having you on the show, Mike. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much, Ryan.